She won't strike you straight on. Not at first. She won't raise her voice. She won't threaten you. She won't throw fire. No, she'll smile. She'll delay. She'll disagree gently, change her mind without warning, and quietly observe what you do when the pressure gets subtle. That's the beginning. That's the first filter. And if you fail it, you won't even notice at first. No outburst, no argument, just a shift, a slow surrender. Because the moment a man gives up his sense of direction, his time, his values, just to win her approval, he's lost far more than her admiration. He's lost control of himself. Machiavelli once said, "He who becomes master of a city used to freedom and does not destroy it will himself be destroyed." And suddenly it makes sense why most men lose everything. They try to win women without challenging their illusions. They try to lead without ever testing loyalty. They want to be respected without checking who's really standing with them. And because they don't look closely, they're devoured by the very thing they thought they were building. Let's get something straight. This isn't about blaming women. They're not chaotic for the sake of it. They're calculating, yes, but not because they're cruel. It's because life forces them to be. A woman who can't test a man's strength isn't just disappointed. She's unsafe. So the moment you speak, she's not just hearing your words. She's decoding your motives. She's watching how you react when she's late, how easily you forgive when she breaks a promise, how quickly you shift your boundaries just to keep the peace. The things you think are kindness, she often sees as softness, and softness, unchecked, reads as weakness. Machiavelli warned us, a prince who isn't sharp himself will always be misled by those around him. That's your mistake, man. You think pleasing her earns her love. But as Machiavelli said, it's safer to be feared than loved when you have to choose. That doesn't mean cruelty. It means clarity. A woman might love the man she can manipulate, but she'll only respect the one she can't move. And in the long run, it's respect, not love, that keeps loyalty in place. Everyone in your life is watching how you respond to resistance. She comes late. Do you change your whole day? Or hold your standard? She talks about her ex. Do you get jealous or stay composed? She shuts down your ideas. Do you backtrack or stand firm? Every one of these moments is a test, not just from her, but from the world. And how you react, that's your verdict. Now don't confuse this with playing games. If that's where your mind goes, you're still in the fog. This isn't manipulation. It's sovereignty. A man who never tests a woman is like a king who never walks his kingdom's walls. He'll be invaded, used, and overthrown before he even realizes he was at war. Why? Because he mistook her smile for peace. But Machiavelli warned us, appearances are dangerous. Everyone sees who you appear to be. Few ever experience who you really are. And women, more than anyone, have mastered the art of appearing sweet while quietly pushing limits. She'll laugh at your jokes. She'll call you charming. And all the while, she's pressing up against your edges, seeing where you bend. She won't ask, "Can I lead you?" She'll just try. And the second you fold, you've shown her the truth. Not that you're strong, but that you're soft. Not the leader, but the eled. You weren't raised to test. You were raised to trust. You were told that love is earned through kindness, attention, and support. That if you're just a good man, she'll recognize it. Machiavelli would scoff at that idea. In a world where power is always in play, only fools think goodness wins by default. He wrote, "A man who tries to live completely by virtue will be destroyed by those who don't." You weren't born into peace. You were born into evaluation. Even the kindest woman doesn't love you for being nice. She loves you for your gravity, your ability to stand firm, to lead, to remain unmoved in the middle of her emotional storms. So what happens when she cries? Do you cave? When she disrespects you, do you chase her for answers? When she disappears, do you wait by the phone like a dog? Or do you keep moving forward like a man with direction? These are her tests. Unspoken, invisible, but constant. You won't hear them, but you'll feel them. In every pause, every contradiction, every glance. She's watching how quickly you compromise just to keep her happy. And when you do, the smile might stay. But the respect, it vanishes. That's why so many men feel confused when a woman grows cold, distant, less affectionate. They didn't hear a rejection, but they were rejected. Silently, because she saw something in you she couldn't unsee. Your soft underbelly. The part of you that folds under tension. Machiavelli advised rulers to appear virtuous, but to be ready to act otherwise when necessary. It is good to be merciful, faithful, humane, sincere, and religious, but you must also be prepared to become the opposite if the situation demands it. That's where modern men fail. We live in a culture that praises softness, but never rewards it. Vulnerability might get applause in theory, but in practice it gets punished. So what's the solution? You test. Not out of bitterness, not for revenge, but for clarity. You ask yourself, is she here because I bend, or because I don't? Is her loyalty real, or is it just maintained by my constant effort to keep the peace? You won't find those answers in calm waters. You'll only find them when you disturb the surface. Tell her no. See what trembles. Withhold your attention. See what remains. Speak your truth. And notice what disappears. A grounded, mature woman won't flinch at your standards. She may push back, but deep down, she'll respect them. But a woman who's addicted to control will never stay with a man she can't sway. And that's where most men break. Not because they're weak, but because they refuse to act strong. You've been trained to avoid conflict, taught that resistance equals rejection. But that's a lie. Here's the truth. Pleasing always leads to rejection. Resistance, though uncomfortable, reveals her true character. Let me say that again. Pleasing guarantees rejection. Resistance reveals character. A Machiavellian man doesn't argue. He doesn't beg. He doesn't explain himself over and over, hoping to be understood. He watches. He withholds. He tests. Because anything that can't survive scrutiny isn't worth keeping. And anything that collapses under pressure was never solid in the first place. A woman will never tell you what she truly respects. She'll only show you, through what she stays for, what she values when you're no longer playing nice. She might say she wants a kind man, but vanish the moment you put her emotions ahead of your principles. She might swear she values honesty, but rage when your truth doesn't fit her fantasy. And this is exactly why your tests must be silent, not explained, not warned, just quietly executed. Because only in silence do her instincts kick in. And instinct is what Machiavelli studied, far more than sentiment. He wasn't writing for men who wanted to be liked. He was writing for men who wanted to lead, who wanted to rule, not over others, but over themselves. He wrote, "The first way to judge the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the people he keeps close." And that principle applies to you. Want to know your value as a man? Look at the woman beside you, not at how attractive she is, but at how she responds to your boundaries. If she's only sweet when you're soft, if she's only loyal when it's easy, if she only sticks around when you bend. She doesn't respect you. She tolerates you. She's there for the convenience, not the conviction. And the test is not about punishment. It's about gathering information. If you demand nothing, she'll show you nothing. If you ignore every red flag, she'll plant more. But the moment you start requiring clarity, the moment you remove comfort without explanation, the moment you say no with a calm face and firm energy, she runs out of script. Her performance ends. Her essence begins. Now you'll see what she's really made of. Will she accuse you or adapt? Will she meet you or fold? Will she offer value or just remind you of what you owe her? That reaction is your report card. Machiavelli said, "It is not titles that honor men, but men who honor titles." It's not your role as boyfriend, husband, or partner that earns you her respect. It's how you enforce that role under pressure that makes the difference. But let's be real. Most men don't have that kind of strength. They fold the second it gets uncomfortable. They confuse tears for truth. They mistake chaos for passion. They excuse manipulation and call it love. But Machiavelli would say, the promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. Translation? She promised to love you when you looked like a man. But the moment you started bending to her moods, explaining away her disrespect, and organizing your life around her validation, she broke her promise. And here's the brutal truth. She was right to. Because you broke first. You broke the illusion of strength. And still, most men don't wake up. They double down. They think she's just going through something and become therapists, emotional sponges, constant comfort providers. They start calling their self-abandonment love. But the Machiavellian man? He doesn't rescue dysfunction. He filters it, quietly, cleanly, without apology. He doesn't try to fix broken values with more affection. He doesn't ask, how do I make her stay? He asks, should she even be here? Because she doesn't need more love. She needs a mirror. And if you are the man you claim to be, you become that mirror. Still, reflective, unshaken. You don't demand anything. You don't chase. You simply reveal and let her choose. Now listen carefully. Don't mistake her silence for surrender. When you begin testing, she won't explode. Not right away. She'll shift. She'll analyze. She might even become sweeter for a moment. Why? Because she's trying to figure out if this strength you're showing is real or just a performance. Because the second you draw a real line, you're challenging the version of her that was winning. And now she's at a crossroads. She either evolves or escalates. If she escalates, guilt trips, coldness, tantrums, emotional withdrawal, you must not move. This is where most men break. They test once, see pushback, and instantly retreat. They take the discomfort as a sign to compromise. But Machiavelli warned, injuries must be inflicted all at once, so that their taste may be less offensive. In other words, if you're going to draw a line, draw it fully, decisively, without second-guessing. Don't set a boundary 1 week and collapse the next. That's not strength, that's chaos, and chaos is her playground. Understand this. Her initial resistance is not the problem. Her long-term reaction to your consistency is the truth. Anyone can fake composure for a few days. But what happens after the third time you say no? What happens when you don't flinch at her guilt? When you ignore the drama? When you stop entertaining and start evaluating? Most women will flinch. Some will flee. A few, the rare ones, will adapt. And those are the ones you watch, slowly, cautiously. You never fully trust, not right away, but you begin to observe. You study patterns, not promises, because this is the Machiavellian frame. Machiavelli said, "A wise man follows paths beaten by great men." That means you don't invent new strategies. You refine timeless ones. You don't broadcast your values. You enforce them. And you don't give exceptions based on beauty, loneliness, or emotion. Because the test isn't just for her. It's for you. Can you live without comfort long enough to see the truth? Can you sit in silence long enough to spot the patterns? Can you go without intimacy, attention, validation long enough to see her? Most men can't. They say they want truth, but they break after one cold night. They say they want a queen, but they bow to anyone who smiles at them. But Machiavelli would say, men are driven by two forces, love or fear. And if your relationship is driven by fear, the fear of losing her, upsetting her, disappointing her, you are not leading. You are submitting. You can't protect a woman you fear. You can't lead someone you depend on emotionally. You can't test someone whose reaction matters more to you than your peace of mind. So you begin small. Cancel a plan. Say no. Stay quiet when she pokes for a reaction. Let her sit with her own emotions without rushing in to manage them. Then you watch. Not with attachment. Not with anger, but with detachment. Not to punish. To understand. Because this is the way of the prince. Not because it's cruel, but because it's the only way to rule without being ruled. The woman you cannot test is the woman who will slowly dismantle you. She won't need to yell. She won't need to dominate with words. She'll unravel you softly, with her smile, her affection, her warmth, and 1,000 tiny compromises you gave away without realizing they were your spine. One boundary avoided, one argument swallowed, one apology you didn't owe but offered anyway, just to keep the mood light. She never had to raise her voice, because you gave your power away voluntarily. And you called it love. But a woman who passes your test, she's different. She doesn't flatter you endlessly. She doesn't worship you. She doesn't play the role of obedient follower. No. She stands next to you. She doesn't flinch when challenged. When you push, she holds her shape. Not because she's afraid, but because she respects the kind of man who doesn't fold. That's the rare woman. And you'll never meet her if you don't filter, if you don't observe, if you don't resist. Because everything that feels intoxicating at the beginning, her attention, her admiration, her emotional connection, can become a trap if you take it at face value. Machiavelli warned us, the vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, and the world is made up of the vulgar. That's the tragedy of the modern man. He looks at how she acts in the honeymoon phase. He assumes she's different. He invests before observing. He gives before testing. And by the time he realizes he was chosen for how pliable he is, not how powerful, he's already trapped in the illusion. So now, you have a choice. You can close this video and go back to believing the fairy tale. You can keep pretending love is pure, that effort is always rewarded, that women are innocent and boundaries are mean. Or you can wake up. You can start testing, not to control, but to clarify. Test her silence. Test her anger. Test her consistency. Test how she reacts when the answer is no. Because any woman who cannot withstand scrutiny should never be trusted with your investment. Period. And any man who refuses to test has already surrendered. If something deep inside you clicked, If a part of you felt exposed by these words, it's because this message hit a truth you've been trying to avoid. You've seen the signs. You've felt the moments where you backed down when you knew you should have stood tall. You've felt that silent rejection after you folded to avoid conflict. Now you see it for what it is. She wasn't confused. She wasn't unsure. She was simply done respecting you. She saw you break under light pressure, and in that moment, everything changed. The dynamic flipped. You lost your gravity, and she lost her attraction. But now, you have the tools. Now you know what to do. You don't need to yell. You don't need to dominate. You just need to test. Because if she can't respect your no, she was never going to respect your yes. Begin with one small action. Cancel a plan. Not to be cruel, but to see. Say no when she expects you to say yes. Don't respond to her drama. Let the silence do the talking. Watch not to manipulate, but to understand. Because how she behaves when she doesn't get her way reveals who she truly is, and that's your real report card. Machiavelli never taught men to be heartless. He taught men to be measured, to be wise, to lead with awareness instead of emotion, to recognize the games of power that exist in every relationship, especially the ones that feel the most romantic. Because the most dangerous woman isn't the one who attacks directly. It's the one who slowly strips you of your judgment, who conditions you to put her first in all things, who makes you feel guilty for having standards, who trains you to call it partnership when it's actually control. That woman doesn't need to dominate. She just needs you to stop defending your edge. So what do? You stop explaining. You stop defending. You stop trying to be endlessly understanding. You let your standards speak louder than your words. And most importantly, you never backtrack once the line is drawn. Because here's what most men never learn. The woman who can't move you will never leave you. She may fight. She may resist. She may test you harder. But deep down, she'll feel something she's never felt before. Safety, not comfort. Safety. Because women don't feel secure when you give them everything. They feel secure when they realize you're not easily shaken. The man who bends for every mood cannot be trusted with a storm, and storms always come. The Machiavellian man doesn't fear them, he welcomes them, because storms reveal what sunshine hides, and if a woman can't survive your boundaries, she was never meant to be beside you. So test her. Test for silence, test for strength, test for truth. Because if she passes, she's not just a lover, she's a partner, a real one. And if she fails, you didn't lose love, you dodged a disaster. If this message spoke to something buried in you, share it. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Support the message using the link in the description. Because every time this message reaches another man, another mind wakes up before it's too late. And that may be the most powerful Machiavellian move of all, to awaken the kingdom before it's invaded. Test everything, trust no mask, and never let affection silence your judgment again.